Our world is just excess oriented, right? It's just gather unto yourself. The old greed is good, right? And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, this philosophy of our culture that has not only blossomed, but continues to grow exponentially to where it seems like there's nothing to stop it, nothing to even slow it down. Something that reminds me of some of the excess is that TV show Hoarders. Have you seen this show? Boy, I don't even know if it's on anymore. I watched it a lot initially, and it would like send me into a cleaning spree every time I would watch it because I'd be like, I don't want to be like that. And of course, it wasn't really that bad usually that I had made a mess, but it was just clutter a lot of the time. And we live in a world where the message is clear, though. Like sometimes people just gather so much stuff. They feel like they're drowning in their stuff. They feel like they just can't even get out of it. There's a lady in that picture. I don't know if you can see her. She's way in the back. She's buried under all that stuff. And I think that picture just, to me, just really spoke to me, this idea of it. Boy, we are just sometimes drowning in garbage. We have so much stuff. Or maybe it's not stuff you have. Maybe you're a real clean freak, but maybe it's your calendar. Maybe your calendar, you just can't get a breath in because you've got something every moment. Our world tells us we need more stuff, more success, scroll more, watch more, continue to plug into content more. You need more, more, more. And perhaps one of the most freeing things we can start to learn is that we really don't need more. That the research is starting to show that less actually makes us happier. And some of the most interesting research has showed us that experiences are far more memorable, far more valuable than an item we can buy ourselves. And I'm sure you've had this experience where you see something on Amazon that you just have to have. You get it. You're pretty pumped. You see that the box got delivered to your address. You're at work, kind of makes your day at work. You're like, yeah, I'm going to go home and open that. You get home, you open it, you pop it out. It's like 3 sizes smaller than what you ordered. It's horrible. And you're just like, oh, I'll take it back. And then, do you take it back? No, you forget about it. You leave it in the car, floorboards forever. You hit your window. You can't return it anymore. And now you are stuck with this piece of junk. I know this happens. This happens on a regular basis. Or we get something that genuinely works. And we're happy that it solves a problem for that moment. But then we're like, did I really need that? No, not really. What if the path to peace is not adding more, but strategically subtracting things that distract us from keeping the main thing the main thing? You know, I don't know if you're like me, but I'm a piler. Anybody else a piler? Yeah? Yeah, there we go. I got one hand. I got one honest person. Thank you. 2 honest people. Yeah. Not everybody does this, but this is me. This is what I do. I just kind of create piles of stuff, and then I don't remember what I left at the bottom of the pile, and I'm like, Wendy, where is that? And then the thing I'm looking for, and she's like, I don't know where you left that. And I'm like, you took it, right? It's always someone took it. Someone misplaced it, and it's never that. It's always me, you know? I'm like, I like bags. Like I'll hang on to a sack forever. I had some people here yesterday. Oh, that was supposed to be in the trash can, sorry. I had some people here yesterday that were helping us with our graduation party, and they got bored, I guess, a little bit because we were a little slow getting here, and so they went through some of the cabinets in there, and I had secured this for mission camp in 2017. So this is far out of date, so they said, that's got to go. All right, and then, you know, half-empty boxes. I'm just really bad with hanging on to stuff. This shirt from 4 years, you know, May's almost over, so I don't need that anymore. Got that Amazon package, and I never throw the boxes away because I'm like, I'll need that in the future. And my trusty, I'm not throwing this away, but I'm keeping that. That's my Hope House one. The Hope House gave me that, so I'm keeping that. And that left glove. I don't know why I just have a left glove like I'm Michael Jackson or something, but I've just got this one glove inside in there, and it doesn't really fit. Look how tiny that is on my hand. But yeah, I don't know why I have one glove in the kitchen in there, but that should probably go away. And then I found this old rag that was kind of, uh-oh, look. It's a magic trick. No, but it does make us think of something, that when there's so much in the way, there's so much clutter in our life, so much stuff, it is hard to hear from God. It's hard to hear from God if we just allow so many other things to block him out. And it may be different stuff for you. It may not be physical clutter like it is for me. It may be something that, you know, maybe you need to think about cleaning off your schedule. Maybe you need to think about clearing out your social media, clearing out the content you consume. I don't know what that looks like for you, but we're going to talk about this idea today that Jesus gives us an invitation And that's the cool thing. It's not like he's laying a law out for all of us that's going to work for everyone in every situation, but he's inviting us to let go of some things in order to keep the main thing the main thing. And that's my summary statement. That's my way of saying it. It's this idea of simplicity, and that's what I want to explore with you today. I think Richard Foster said it really well when he said, Jesus Christ and all the writers of the New Testament call us to break free of mammon, lust, and to live in joyous trust. To trust Christ. They point us toward a way of living which everything we have, we receive as a gift. This reality frames the heart of Christian simplicity. It is the means of liberation and power to do what is right and to overcome the forces of fear and avarice. And yet I fear too many of us are locked away from this goodness that God has in mind for us. We're locked away because we see examples in culture of others doing differently, and we are, to a fault, copycats. We tend to see what someone else is doing and just copy that, try to take that template, because it's easier than thinking through these things and struggling with these things on our own. And so we're tired and overwhelmed, and sometimes a little bit empty. And we are these things because we've bought into the lie that the next thing that we purchase, the next thing we acquire, the next level we get to, will finally fulfill us. And yet it doesn't. And it's an endless cycle, and it traps us. Because the excess clutter in our lives tends to cloud our souls, tends to keep us from seeing the main thing. It gets covered up because of all of the garbage. And so today I want to talk about freedom offered to us in simplicity in Luke chapter 12. So what we have here is, in the teachings of Jesus, we have this really kind of interesting phrasing of what he has to say about money and possessions. And I think it's really curious how he kind of phrases it and the story that he tells. Now, this is, we've read this before, the parable of the rich fool. It's contained within that teaching. But basically he says, beware, guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own. And the reason that's important, that phrasing is important, is because so many in that culture and 2,000 years later still don't see it that way. They see it as that is the value. That is how you should be measuring your life. But he tells a story. This is Jesus. He tells a story, it says, to help them understand this. He says, a rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. And he said to himself, what should I do? I don't have room for all my crops. And then he said, I know, I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And then I'll have enough room to store all my wheat and other goods. And I'll sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have stored enough away for years to come. Now take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get everything you worked for? And he concludes with this. Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. So the disciples were curious. They wanted to know more. He's teaching them in this setting here, and he's taking a topic that's a little bit difficult to understand, this idea of how do you measure the value of life. And he says, you got to be careful. You've got to guard, not just know the truth, but you've got to be on guard. It's a different thing to know that there's danger outside, that thieves may come in the middle of the night while I'm asleep, but I still leave my front door wide open, right? Not just unlocked, I'm talking open. But if you know there's danger possibly out there, then you just lock the latch and you close the door at night, right? You don't just hope for the best. You are on guard. He says be on guard. That is an active thing that you must do. Not just hoping, but if you really want to fight against greed, you've got to be on guard against greed. Otherwise, you will start to measure your life in how much you own. And so Jesus makes this very clear. And yet, at the same time, like I said, we still struggle with that. We all struggle with that. We tend to struggle with that mostly because our culture is so shaped around the idea of greed is good. And so the people that get lauded, the people who get their name on things, the people that are on TV, the people that are famous, all of that tends to be geared towards this idea of more, more, more. But he said, beware, be guarding against every kind of greed. Jesus teaches this very simple thing, how to measure life. It lines up a lot with Stoic teaching that I have read from the Greek philosophers. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having fewer wants. These teachings that kind of emanate in the same milieu of culture, they tend to align on this topic that people were talking about what virtue looks like and what it means to be a human. And value is not found in that. And yet, if we find our value in that, it's kind of like the little hamster wheel. We just keep chasing things. We keep chasing things. Whether it's a physical possession we have our mind on, or it's a certain amount in our checking account. The most hilarious research is, it doesn't matter what amount of money you have, the research has shown clearly, everybody thinks they need just a little bit more to be happy. So if you're a billionaire, you think you need to be a trillionaire to be happy. If you're at you've got under six figures there, you think you need just to get to the next level of that. If you have nothing, you think you need a little bit more. It's like everybody. Doesn't matter if you have a lot or a little. Everybody thinks they're almost there. And what does that really mean? It means you never arrive. It means there's no end goal. There's no cheese at the end of the maze because there is no end to that maze. And it's crazy making. It makes us really crazy. And so, what would it look like to get rid of that model, right? To jettison that model completely and to say, I want to pursue simplicity instead. I want to make the main thing, and I want to pursue that with a strategy on a regular basis. If you remember the co-founder of Apple, Steve Jobs, he was very focused on paring down their offerings, paring down their products. Originally, when they started out, he did not have a lot of colors. He did not have a lot of different it was like, it's kind of like the Henry Ford thing. We have multiple vehicles, and they're all this one vehicle is kind of what Henry Ford's concept was, and it's kind of the same thing. Jobs said one time, that's been one of my mantras, focus and simplicity, because simple can be harder than complex. And that's the rub. He's right. Simple can be harder than complex. It's difficult to edit. When I come to you on Sunday mornings, I usually have about 6 hours of content. If you would sit with me for 6 hours, I could give you 6 hours of talk on this. But I work all week at cutting out extra stuff. When I was younger and I started in my 20s, it was adding, trying to make it long enough. Because my first time I got in front of a group of people at my home church, I think I was 17 or 18, it went 6 minutes. And everybody was like, it was so good. And I'm like, how are we getting out so early? I mean, it was crazy. And then the problem became different. The problem became, I can go for 40 or 50 or longer. And cutting. And so the editing process, if you're a writer or if you know anything about that, the editing process is awful. It's so much easier to leave things long form and let them go forever. It's way more difficult to say what you want to say or to create the art you want to create and create it in a smaller container. That is so much more difficult to put that canvas together. And so Jobs is right. It's difficult. And it's difficult for you and it's difficult for me to be simple and to pursue simplicity because it means cutting out some things. And things that we think we need, crutches. Things that we think that we have to have in our life that bring us joy, we think, when really they're just giving us little, adrenaline boosts, but it's not really, little dopamine boosts, but it's not really long-term happiness. It's just this crazy-making cycle of the wheel. So let's focus on the solution then. Let's talk about the solution for a moment, which is this practice of simplicity. I have been putting off since Christmas decluttering my office here. And I started this week. And I found things from the fall. And I was like, wow. I found like an advertisement we had for the S'more Sunday back in the fall. And I was like, well, I guess I don't need that anymore. And so I was like going through stuff. And it's silly, right? It's silly when you go through stuff. When you clean, does it make you feel ridiculous? Like, what am I doing? Why do I still have this stuff? But when I get rid of it and then I can walk into like a clean space, that is almost like the new bed sheets feeling. Anybody know what new bed sheet feeling is? When you get new sheets, and when you get to be my age, that's like one of your big joys in life, right? Like, new sheet day. Seriously, I don't know. There's not much better, right? And so it's always kind of like a little boost. And when I walk into a clean space and it kind of frees your mind, and you're not dreading the cleaning up process and you're not just cluttered, it is kind of this like weight off your shoulders. Well, think about what that would look like in your life if you not only eliminated physical things, but you eliminated kind of those stresses we put on there in your mind space. You got rid of some of those things. And you didn't focus continually on what you're getting in this life, but you focused on some of the eternal investments you can make. That's not because earthly things are evil in and of themselves. I believe most items are amoral in our world, right? But it's because they're temporary. Everything's temporary. All of it. None of it do you get to keep. And Matthew 6:19, Jesus says, don't store up treasures here on earth. Store treasures in heaven. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be. Treasure. What do we treasure? And that's a different thing, isn't it? Because I don't think any of us would say, yeah, that thing I got on Amazon, or that car, or that item I had been wanting so bad that I got, that electronic, whatever it is, that piece of jewelry, whatever I acquired, I treasure that. I mean, I love technology. I'm a nerd. But there's never been a piece of technology I'm like, ooh, I treasure it. I mean, I like it, right? I think it's cool, but I'm not like, it's the treasure of my heart. And that's the reality. What do I treasure then? Right? What is the treasuring thing? And that's what we have to really focus in on with that concept. I love what Chopin said. He said, simplicity is the final achievement. And he was coming from the musician's perspective, right? So from the art maker's perspective, simplicity is the final achievement. After one has played a vast quantity of notes and more notes, it is simplicity that emerges as the crowning reward of art. We know, and I'm not a musician, but I know a difference between noise and music. And we know that the musician, and specifically the writer and the performer, are the ones that go in there and edit and craft to bring us something beautiful. And I can't do that. And so I appreciate that. And I appreciate his insight that art is about simplicity. And at the end of the day, life is about simplicity. It is the final achievement for us. It is to cut out those extra things, to say no to certain things. Because when we say no to the excess, we're saying yes to something bigger, something that Jesus offers us, this idea of simplicity. So I really don't think simplicity is just about owning less. I think it's about making space for what matters most. And that's what you have to decide. What matters most? So I'm going to challenge you this week. Here's your challenge this week. It's not a big reading plan like we've been doing. We went through a couple of big ones there. There's no text message this week. This week is to just take this task on, and I'll email you if you're on our email list. I'll send it out later this week. But think about one area in your life. Identify one spending, one calendar item, one schedule, something that you could simplify, that you could take from this big, ugly, cluttered mess, and you could simplify. I read about this week a spending fast someone tried for a month. Someone else tried it for a week. I thought it was the most curious idea. They tried to get by with spending zero. And by the month one was really interesting to watch. I mean, I'm talking zero, like outside of like your bills, like the bills were paid, but like extra spending, right? Restaurants, anything that was not like essential for jobs. So they paid their gas to get their car, they paid their insurance, but like all kind of extraneous entertainment, all of that. And it was really curious to read about their response to that and kind of the good things they saw with that and also the stressors they had initially through that process. What would it be like this week if you just took some stuff, donated it, gave it away that you don't need, you haven't used, and it's just taking up space and crowding your space and crowding your mind? And then, and this is the trick, right? When you clear off the calendar space and you clear off the physical space, not to fill that back with stuff. That's the challenge, isn't it? Not to fill that back. But instead, maybe you give yourself some space and some time, because honestly, solitude can't happen with Christ. You can't have time with God, conversation with God, if you're just jam-packed all day long. So it's not going to come until some clearing happens. And then what if you filled some of that space, not even all of it, just some of it, with your conversation with God? And what if that gave you a hunger for more and more and more? What if you found out the joy that you thought you were getting through stuff actually comes through a closer connection with the Father? And what if? What if we were a community of people who outsiders saw were consumed with the idea of simplicity? In a world that screams for excess, we were a counter argument to that lifestyle. That we said no to excess, that we were not going to define each other by what we bought or what we had, but we were going to define ourselves instead by how we emulated the Savior, by giving and giving and serving and serving. What if our homes, instead of us worrying about filling them with more things, we worried and focused on filling them with peace, filling them with joy? What if our schedules weren't just busy and filled to the brim, but instead meaningful, strategic, filled with virtue? Simplicity makes room for more joy, more generosity, more room for God in your life. And that's what I want to encourage you for ultimately, is to say no to excess. Because the second I say no to excess, I create a really interesting opportunity to start saying yes to trusting Jesus. As long as I think my security, my hope is in stuff, in being busy, in being popular, in being successful, in being wealthy, as long as my identity is consumed in those, I have little room for Christ. It is when I start to say no to what culture says is important, and I start to say yes to trusting Jesus, that I bridge that gap. And so that's what I encourage you, to make that space to trust Jesus fully. The rich young ruler is one of the parables that we read, and he's asking basically to Jesus, he's like, what do I have to do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus knows who he is, and so he kind of reads him instantly and knows that the one thing he hasn't done really is to let go of stuff. And Jesus says, well, go sell everything you have. And the guy walks away. And it's one of the most heartbreaking stories in the New Testament to me, because he walks away, and we know in that moment that he's walking away because stuff has its hooks in him. And so he misses out on the beauty of a relationship with Jesus because he couldn't make space. My hope for you is that you don't fall into that trap. And it is a trap. And it does have hooks in all of us to different degrees. But let's help each other out. Let's be a community that never lets those be the stories told. Let's not laud those things as valuable and good and beautiful. But instead, let's look to the examples around us of people that are choosing simplicity. And let's actively encourage each other to choose simplicity. And ultimately, let's actively encourage one another to trust Jesus.